So I had a question straight out of the book.
Oh.
Can people do anything?
Of course not. Stupid fucking question.
And even if the answer is yes, so what?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's the whole thing. Like, even with feminists and women, that like a woman can do everything a man can do, and that's bullshit. Because a man can't do everything another man can do, so a woman certainly can't do it. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no way. Like there's certain things. Like, and this might sound sexist, but in general, right? I'm 6'5", 290 pounds in that range, right? My wife's 5'2", 107 pounds. Just physically, there's things I can do that she can't do. She can't pick up 110 pounds and carry it around like I can, because it's 100% of her body weight. Do you know what I mean? So, and certain things that she has a knack for that I can't do. She's just better at it. I can open a fucking jar. I can lift something heavy that she can't do because I'm just better at it. And just like, other people can, some people can, like Mozart could have music in his head and write it out. I can't do that. You know what I mean? Like it's can we be a lot better than we are? And absolutely. But can we do anything? No.
I think that's the trick question, isn't it? In the book, they ask that question, and then they say if the answer is yes, no, or maybe, so what? The question is, if it's something you want to do, the question is how. How do you do it? And that's the growth mindset. Whereas the yes, no, maybe is a kind of fixed answer.
Well, the question I like. The question I like to ask that you don't like.
Go on.
So which one? What is it? You say, what is the question you asked? And then you say how. Yeah. What's the question I'm going to ask?
Why?
Yeah. Because I found out that if you have enough or a big or strong enough why, then the hows will take care of themselves, right? If you really have that driven, determined purpose or whatever that it's like it's not I want to do this. It's I'm gonna do it. There's no fucking doubt in my mind. And this is why, and you can find a way. There's certain things. It's like it's the same thing, right? When if like my wife, 107 pounds or whatever, and if my kid was trapped under the car, right? She can't physically pick up the car, right? But with a big enough why, if the kid's trapped under, she could. They've seen women pick up cars of ridiculous feats of strength because there was a big enough why. How did she do it? Well, she recruited all the muscle fibers in her body and the adrenaline. Yeah, bullshit. Her kid was fucking stuck under there, and she did what she had to do. She had a big fucking why. So, what do you think?
I got a lot of resistance to the why question, principally because it usually gets an answer that's something along the lines of because. In my mind, the why question is really synonymous with what do you value. So, why do you want to do that? Because I value it. It's high on my values list. Now, from what you just said, it also occurs to me that I don't think I've had a big enough why in my life to ever experience anything like that. So I see what you're saying, and maybe I need to experience it, but that's, yeah, I can accept that. Like you say, if the why is big enough and it's compelling and it's an absolute must in your kind of model of why, then there's always going to be, if it's not this way, then I'm going to do it that way. And if it's not that way, then there's another way I'm going to find to do it because it's so important. It's so compelling. The reason to do it is not just a reason to do it. It's, in my mind, it's fucking done. I just need to execute on it. So I kind of get it, but I don't think I've experienced it in a profound way to really get behind it. So yeah, perhaps I'll hold off judgment on that. But I might come around to it.
Maybe not. It's think about this, though, right? think about this. Like my friend I was telling you about. That's the multi-millionaire. I think he's worth $800 million, almost $1 billion or whatever. And what's the difference between him and us?
Well, I'd like to know, but from what we said last time, it seems a mindset. It's just a mindset because everything follows from that. So if you've got a mindset that if this is what required to get it, and I need to make friends, then I'll make friends. If this is what required and I need finance, I'm going to go and find people who've got finance. If this is what's required and I need to persuade people that this is what needs to happen, I'm going to go and persuade people that this is what needs to happen. It's just doing what it takes. That's it. End of. Done.
Yeah, and it makes me think of a quote I read last night or this morning. I can't remember. I think it was this morning. And it was basically, we don't achieve our dreams in life. We achieve our minimum standards right? So that's why, in order to get in life, you need to grow and develop your character, right? Which achieves the dream as a standard instead of a dream. And I think that's one of the things that my friend who is, the multimillionaire, his standards and his things, it doesn't, regular rules don't apply to him. I don't give a fuck if everyone does it this way. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done with or without you. Either you can be part of it or you're not, but I'm getting it done. It's just
Yeah,
having that.
I've
It's almost
noticed that as well. There's, the business gurus that seem to have that attitude. Let's have a decision. Let's not have a debate. And I kind of like that about when I read the biography of Bernie Ecclestone. The guy who owns the F1 franchise. He used to say the same things. Let's not have a debate. Let's have a decision. And the time to write reports is after you've made a decision. But you should always defer that report if there's another decision to be made.
Fuck.
In other words, just make decisions. The reports can always come later when you've got no decisions to make, but you should never have any decisions not to make. It should always be, executing. And I like the idea as well is that the rules don't apply to me. I mean, that sounds conceited and a little bit arrogant, but to a certain extent it's true because, law is flexible, everything's negotiable. And if you've got enough money and if you've got enough resources, things can change. It's like, it's not hard and fast. There's lots of rules and regulations, for example, about where you can build properties and what type of properties. But if you can convince enough people that it's going to be good for the community or it's going to be, it's going to be good for people and not just your own self-serving interests, then it's up for debate and then it's up for negotiation. I mean, it's like this, that crazy Ark encounter that they've built in Kentucky. It's a complete folly, but they've got, I think, $10 million of state money to help fund it as tax rebates because they convinced the state that it would attract 100 million visitors over 20 years, and that's people flooding in to the local hotels and to the local cafes, and so it was negotiated. I think if you're big enough and you've got enough resources, it's all negotiable, I guess. And I do kind of I see that it's absolute focus, and it's almost the ability to make cool decisions that result in the execution, constantly making decisions, not really having a long debate about it. It's moving things quickly.
It's that relentlessness too. It's like there's nothing going to stop them. I mean, it's like it's not even an option to not do it. You know what I mean? It's even like Steve Jobs had that uncanny ability. What do they call it? Like some kind of distortion, time distortion, or some kind of he didn't accept other people's limitations. Like, get it done. I don't give a shit. It's impossible. It's not impossible. If you think it's impossible, get off the job, get out of here. We're going to find someone who knows it's possible.
Yeah, who else said that? I think it was Elon Musk, wasn't he? I think I listened to his book, and it was a similar thing. I think he said that when people came to him with a problem, it's like, what are you asking me for? That's your job. Your job is to solve the problems. That's what I'm paying you for. So, if you come to me and say, look, we've got a problem. Here's solution A. Here's solution B. This one's going to cost you 100 million, but it's going to get done quicker. This one's going to cost you 50 million, but it's going to take a bit longer. Which do you want? That kind of question he can tolerate. But when they just say, we got a problem, we don't know how to solve it, it's like, what the fuck are you here for then?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know who said that, but that's a pretty common thing. Like, never present a problem without a solution, or an idea of a solution. Pretty common, I think.
Yeah, so there was a few questions in the book as well early on, that helped the reader figure out whether they were in a fixed mindset or a growth mindset.
What were they? I don't remember. But one of the things. Okay, you got it.
You're a certain kind of person, and there's not much that can be done to really change that. No matter what kind of person you are, you can always change substantially. You can do things differently, but the important parts of who you are can't really be changed. You can always change basic things about the kind of person you are.
Yeah, that sounds very fixed. You can change anything about who you are.
Right.
So I guess one of the things that kind of stood up for me was when with the fixed mindset, right? It's so crucial for everyone to be perfect right now. It's because one test, one evaluation can measure you forever. That's kind of how they look at things. You know what I mean? Like, it made me kind of like a lot of people who ended up being pretty famous. They were considered by experts to have no future. You know what I mean? Like, I even saw something yesterday. It was a biography of a guy. I can't remember his name, something Daly or something Dali. Or anyways, it was the person who created Captain Underpants, a cartoon, and it was this greatest bio. I'll have to find it, but it was basically saying that he had ADHD, he got kicked out of class, and he would be in the hallways drawing comic books, and the teacher says, why are you wasting your time with something like this? And that's all this stuff. And basically he ended up, this was in second grade, and he ended up creating Captain Underpants in second grade and created this comic book thing and all this funny, great stuff. And at the end of the biography, it said, luckily, person wasn't very good at listening because he ended up, doing it. And it's just like, I love stories like that where that's really the growth mindset. Other people could have been crippled by those words. I hate that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when teachers or parents or other people put other people down and try to limit them with their own limiting beliefs, right? You know what I mean? It's like Dan Locke has a great quote that he says basically that don't let others that didn't go after their dreams talk you out of yours. And I think that's a fucking great quote, and I think it kind of rings home. So when I hear those type of stories where the kid was resilient and it didn't let him affect it, like what's the difference, right? That's the difference of the fixed versus the growth mindset. How do you teach that? How do you encourage that in kids? How do you? It's fascinating to me. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm so excited about learning all about this stuff, and I just made some notes here that the notion of it comes back to belief again. I think you even said it there that when we're told as young people or even children, because you are short, it means that you can't be a basketball player. And I think we touched on that last time. So there's that meaning about beliefs and limits again. Or because you have long arms and a good reach and a tiny waist, it means that you are a boxer. And then the worst thing that happens then is that meaning fixes an identity. And we know from the work of Dilts and Bateson, the hierarchy of mind, that once we take on an identity, we act it out. So if you have an identity of a car mechanic or an identity of a doctor or some kind of stereotype, the unconscious limits your actions and behaviors to make the identity true. And I think this is why when you start attacking people's beliefs, it's only a short step away from actually attacking their identity. And people don't like that because for some reason they get so locked on who they are and what they are. And I think this has been exemplified over the last couple of years with the kind of rise of identity politics and social justice warriors. When people try and identify with things, it limits their behavior because it means that they're not open to anything else that doesn't conform to the belief that supports the identity. But it's disastrous when we impose those judgments and beliefs on young children. And, there's all sorts of tests that have been done, like getting people to do IQ tests or aptitude tests. If you ask the question, please tick the box that identifies your race or gender, if they ask the question before the test, it impacts the test results. If they ask it at the end, it doesn't. Because when you tick a box, like the example in the book is, male, female. If you tick female and you're a woman, that's a maths test. Well, everybody knows that women can't do maths. And therefore, that identity that's kind of unconscious plays out. And they even found this, I was flabbergasted when I found this out, that when Obama was president, the kind of typical aptitude score tests went up in the African
American, yeah.
Yeah, the test scores just went up because they saw, wow, you can do big things if you're black. And I was like, wow, how do people take... And it was just a wake-up call that these kind of things, because I don't know, I don't want to say, white privilege or anything like that, but
that's
just
bullshit.
Not being in that world, not being around it.
Yeah, but it's what you focus on.
You just take it for granted that how can people take these mindsets on, but it's there. It was just such a wake-up call for me. I just wasn't even aware of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? It's the person that can look at the president and say, wow, I can do anything I want in my life. And it's someone that can look at the drug dealer and say, that's all I'm destined for. It's focus. It's a lot of that. I mean, there is some economics that play part. It's not just, if you put anyone in that environment, whether they're green, yellow, black, blue, white, they, in the socioeconomic kind of environment, they're going to behave differently, right? But my thing is, how does one person take a situation? I think I mentioned this in one of the podcasts about the Tony Robbins book about the two brothers that had the father that was alcoholic, right? In and out of jail, and one brother turned out just like him, and the other brother had a good life, yada yada yada. Seemed happy, and then they asked him, separately without each other knowing, like, why did you turn out the way you did? And they both had the same answer. With a father like that, what do you expect? one used it as a reason to be like it, and one used it as a reason to be the opposite. That's what fascinates me. What's the difference between the kid that just cripples at some negative something, and the other one that can just be resilient and not let it shape who they are? You know what I mean? That's what fascinates me. I mean, I think temperament has something to do with it too. Like if like I said, when I was a kid, my parents were very type A personalities. They could be able to stand alone. Everyone, like 99 people in the room out of 100 could be saying it's this way. And if they knew they were right, they would say, you guys are all wrong. Good luck. And they would go the other way. Where a lot of people would get influenced. Well, maybe I'm wrong because everyone else is saying it. But so I think temperament makes a difference. But like, what else though? I mean, like Michael Jordan, when he got cut from the basketball team, what made him say, screw this, I'm going to work hard and be the best ever? And even when he was at the top, he worked harder than anyone else, versus saying, well, maybe I should take up soccer. Like what makes that happen?
Reading some of Marshall Rosenberg's work on nonviolent communication, where he's gone into high conflict zones where families have killed other families, horrible stuff. He noticed that, say, a sole survivor who had the rest of their family killed, he would find one that was full of revenge and would not settle until he'd exacted his redemptive violence. He'd find another person in exactly the same circumstance that just intuitively saw that violence begets violence, and so the last thing in their mind was revenge, but they wanted to talk, negotiate, and broker a settlement. He said, he noticed the difference too, and it's, I guess, in the context of the drunk father, if one person is mapping his reaction according to the benchmark of his father, and the other one's just totally forgotten about the father and just doing his own thing, one says, I don't want to be like that. That means that you're always benchmarking according to that and then doing the opposite. Whereas the other one just said, well, I'm just going to do my own thing.
Or maybe he used it as an excuse to be like that. When he says, with a father like that, what do you expect? That's it.
I mean, the other one could be modeling that as an idealized behavior. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but or just like there's no choice. They can't change it. With a father like that, how else am I supposed to turn out? Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no accountability. It's just like a set thing. It's just a fixed mindset, right? It's like, oh well, what am I supposed to do? Like that's what I saw. You know what I mean? So it's like a victim mentality versus the other. I'm just fascinated with that stuff because it's how you look at things and how the same situation happens to two people, and yet one person uses it as a reason not to be something, and another person uses it as a example to be like that. It's like that old saying, what is it? Something like if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you think it's stupid. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Something like that, right? Where that doesn't really make sense, but like that just popped in my head. Like,
yeah, no, I've heard that one before. Yeah, and it's true. And there's that judgment. Who are we to judge because we don't know the context? And even if we do judge on its ability to swim, so what?
Yeah, what does it matter?
Another passage here from the book. It says, when you enter a mindset, you enter a new world. It says, in one world, the world of the fixed traits, success is about proving you're smart or talented, validating yourself. In the other, the world of changing qualities, it's about stretching yourself to learn something new, developing yourself. So, if you had to choose one, proving yourself and validating yourself, whereby setback is recognized as failure, and therefore if you don't want any more future failure, you always reject future opportunities because you're rejecting future failure. Or would you choose setback as meaning that there's something to learn without judgment or evaluation? It's just something to learn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's another excerpt in that where they wrote to I think teachers, and they were really skewing the questions to a fixed mindset. And a person replied back saying, having completed the educator's portion of your recent survey, I must request that my results be excluded from the study. I feel the study itself is scientifically unsound. Unfortunately, the test uses a faulty premise, asking teachers to make assumptions about a given student based on nothing more than a number on a page. Performance cannot be based on one assessment. You cannot determine the slope of a line given only one point, as there is no line to begin with. A single point in time does not show trends, improvement, lack of effort, or mathematical ability. Sincerely, person's name, Michael Rordian or whatever. And I think, wow, that's great. The single point, and you can't, it's not a line. It's just like, I think it's just like the perfect response.
Yeah, I was glad to read that, and they're absolutely right. And that's the thing about proving yourself. You're just proving, you're validating yourself at this point in time. And then tomorrow it's just another point in time. So you're constantly validating your stagnant position. Whereas if you let it all go, there's no judgment. You're free to make mistakes then. It almost gives you permission to experiment about life.
Yeah, and it's more about like the learning part. Like it's like I never realized everything they said about John McEnroe. I know what I assumed as a kid. He was just always screaming and yelling. But then what John Wooden said, he said the basketball coach, he says you aren't a failure until you start to blame. What he means is that you can still be in the process of learning from your mistakes until you deny them, right? So you stop blaming. And like with McEnroe, everything was like he undertrained, he overtrained. It was always like fucking ridiculous, right? And then like you said too, like how we see certain situations in general, right? Like one of the stories was something about they were like on a fishing trip or something like that, and the lady had caught a fish, and the husband's reaction came running over with, beaming with pride and saying, life with you is so exciting, right? But reaction two is that the evening when they went to the dinner room for the dining room for dinner, two men came up to the husband and said, David, how are you coping? And he looked at them blankly. He had no idea what they were talking about, and he was the one that thought her catching the fish was exciting. But she knew exactly what they meant. They had expected him to feel diminished, and they went on to make it clear that that's exactly what her success had done to them, because she caught the fish and they didn't. It's really crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I've been caught out in social situations like that myself, and I think, what do you mean? How am I coping? It's just a total mystery to me, and then that puts so much doubt in my mind. It's like, what the fuck are they talking about? And I don't get it, and then it just confuses the whole issue. And it's crazy that people associate so much status by proxy. And I actually made some notes here about what John Wooden said, exactly as you said, that you aren't a failure until you start to blame. And a little bit of law that I read a while ago, blame, it's like an external judgment of fault, and it seeks recompense from the other party rather than self, because if why there's blame as a claim. So it comes back to what I said in the last podcast, you made me uncomfortable, or you made me feel offended, therefore it's your fault, therefore you have to pay. So it takes the responsibility of change off of me to the person that I'm blaming, and it's just such a weasel way out
thing. Oh yeah. It's like talk about giving all your power away. It's just disgusting.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of the hard things I have with when people make excuses, or and then it kind of ties into that confirmation bias again. I can't avoid that. It's like every day I see it more and more, and I'm like, wow, Jesus. And people's need to be right is greater than any desire that they have. It's really bizarre.
Yeah. Again, I think thinking about it, the reason why people want to feel that they're right or acknowledge that they're right is because they fear the judgment and stigma of being labelled wrong or stupid, or you didn't know that, ha 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 ha. And I've seen that. I've had my little YouTube flame wars over the years, and damning comment from the counterparty is always, you didn't know that, ha 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 ha. Well, what do you mean I didn't know that? No, I'm not a rocket scientist, I'm not a legal expert. Of course I didn't know that. And it always bewilders me that we would berate people or give them poor test results for not knowing something that they weren't told in the first place. It's like, well, how do you expect me to know? You didn't tell me that this is what I needed to know, and no one mentioned this in class, so of course I didn't know. Why?
That's
how was I supposed to? It's kind of crazy.
It brings me back to, you just made me think of a time where I was applying for a job within a company I was already working for. They told me that I wasn't ready for it because I wasn't doing this and this. I said, okay, fair enough. So I said, well, who is doing that right now in the company? Who is doing that? And they said, no one. I said, okay, so you're telling me that you have never told me that this is what's expected to go to the next level. No one is actually doing it in the place. And you expect me to know this how? Like it doesn't make sense. Like no one's doing it, no one's ever mentioned it, and now all of a sudden it's a metric, but there's no one in the store doing it. That doesn't make sense. It's the same kind of principle. It just made me think of that.
Yeah, and that leads me on to another thing as well in the book, that often people make these judgments to feel superior. Like this guy, oh, you didn't know that, or like you were saying there, oh, you don't know how to do that, ha ha ha. And it infers that they do when really they don't, but they're deluding themselves, pretending to know these things, and they get that immediate satisfaction of being superior out of a judgment that they know something that you don't, and somehow that makes them better, more informed, or
it doesn't work. They still feel like shit. They still feel like a piece of shit.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's another thing as well. From the point of view of the fixed mindset, effort is only for people with deficiencies. So because I'm superior and I know everything, I'm sorted, but you down there that don't know it, look at the amount of effort you're having to put into this conversation just to keep up. And again, it's another judgment of positioning themselves in a superior position without actually doing any effort.
Yeah, it makes me think of like elementary school. It's so primitive and so like ridiculous. Like it's I can't even fathom people doing that. Like my immediate reaction would be, are you really that insecure? You have to try to mock people if they don't know something, really? Like is that your self-worth is so low that you have to do that to try to gain some kind of self-worth? Like that's the first thing that comes in my mind. I would probably say that too. But
yeah, and Dweck in the book goes on to, that's often how bullying starts. Yeah, you don't belong in our group because you're either superior or inferior, and either way that's an excuse to beat you up because you're a posh toff and got more money, or we're going to beat you up because you're poor and dressed in shabby clothes and we don't like that. And therefore it's justified to bully or tease, and it all extends from judgment.
Well, yeah, but I think it's deeper than that. It's the bully is actually the victim, which most people don't see it that way. And that's how it expresses out into the to the other way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, they've learned the behavior probably from their parents, so that's how their parents treat them.
Yeah, they got a lot of pain. So, but another cool thing about the growth mindset was that resonated with me is the quote was, a remarkable thing I've learned from my research is that in the growth mindset, you don't always need confidence, right? Like so many people need to feel confident before they can take action, before they can do stuff. And it's like most people that do things for the first time you try it is usually the worst you're going to be at it, right? And then you usually can get better at it the more you kind of do it, right? So but when you're not good at something, instead of saying I'm not good at it and not doing it because you fixed mindset, you can still kind of dig into it and stick to it, right? And just because you're not good at it doesn't mean that you're not going to be good at it, right? You don't have to be great at something to enjoy it. Like I suck at chess and I love it. I love playing. I could get beat all day long. As long as someone's kind of teaching me a little bit what I'm doing wrong. If they're just beating the shit out of me for no fun and I'm not learning anything because I don't know, I'm not good enough to notice it, that's not fun. But if they say, hey man, you exposed your queen over here and you shouldn't have did that. Oh, okay, cool, thanks.
Funny you mentioned that. I've got right in my next note is a quote. I think you put it out on your Facebook a few weeks ago. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little and not those who know much who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science.
Yeah,
there was an abridged version I gave you about there's nothing like ignorance that grows confidence. Guess who wrote that?
Who?
Charles Darwin.
Oh, I believe that. That guy's been misquoted by just about everybody.
Yeah. What else did you say? There was something I was going to come back to because you were
the confidence or the
confidence. Yeah. Just before chess.
Well, I mean the chess thing. The chess. So I like things that I'm not good at.
Yes, that's right. And the other quote as well. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first. That's another one that Dweck talks about in the book as well, is where when people try something and then we say, oh, we just don't have an innate talent for that, or our abilities lie elsewhere, so we just pass on it after trying it once. And again, it's another fixed judgment that if you weren't brilliant at it first time, then it's just not for you. Another fixed mindset, judgmental.
Yeah, and I really think that the belief thing, like I think you mentioned last time about the student that he rushed in late to the math class and quickly copied the two homework problems on the blackboard from the blackboard, and he went home and he found it was really difficult, and it took him several days of hard work to crack them open and solve them, and they turned out not to be homework problems at all, but they were two famous math problems that had never been solved. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
just the
yeah.
frame. That's the frame of it, right? That's the whole. It's like Elon Musk said. If I would have known how hard it would be to do a car company, the only reason why I did is because I was too stupid to know how much work it would be. No rational person would ever attempt this. It's because of stupidity that I have this company, or something like that effect.
Yeah, yeah. Who else has said that? The guys who made Team America, that film, they said the same thing. They didn't realize the amount of effort it would have, and if they said if we knew ahead that it would require that effort, we would never have made it. Different people who made Tron said the same thing. The first one with the special effects, groundbreaking at the time. It was a painful labor of love.
I think that's why the why is so important.
Well,
I don't
sometimes you
know.
just get so far in that you're kind of obligated to finish because you borrowed a lot of money from a lot of other people because you said that you could make this film, and now it's like, oh shit,
Is that
got to
the
do
sunk
it.
cost fallacy? Is that what that is?
Yeah, yeah, sunk cost
Something
fallacy.
like that?
Well, yeah, yeah, it is a sunk cost in it because I mean, the sunk cost fallacy is really where you should really stop because it's going to not work out. But these guys turned it around and insisted on finishing it anyway. So I mean,
How do you
even with
know though, right? It's like they
well,
say most
yeah,
people stop 3 feet from gold, right? And it's like, how do you know when to keep going, when to cut it? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, that's where your friend comes in because I'm sure that question will never enter his head. It'll be, what do I need to get this done? All
well,
right, well, we've run
it'll
out of
end when
money,
I have
so
it.
even if I've run out of money or run out of time, how can I get it done anyway?
Yeah, that uncompromising pit bull determination. Nothing can break their frame. Nothing can change their mind. You can talk to all the experts can tell you they can't be done, and they don't give a fuck. They don't give a shit. I don't care. Just because no one else has done it, they don't. You don't know me. It's just that mindset is unbelievable. It's contagious too. I got
Yeah,
to give him a call. I talked to him. I feel like fuck. I feel like part of that.
yeah, yeah. No, that must be great to touch base with him, and it cracks me up as well when people talk about the impossible. We need to do this. Oh, that's impossible. Great. So how do we do it? And he just blaze through that limit as though it's not even there. Cracks me up that when people make claim to have done the impossible. Well, if it was impossible, you never really would have done it. So it wasn't really impossible. It might be no one's done it before, or you couldn't figure out how to have done it, or it required some novel breakthrough. But nevertheless, it was never impossible, or else it would still have been impossible. So it's just a language you use as well. Modal operators of necessity, or modal operators of possibility. We must do it or we can do it. One is compulsion and the other is choice. Which would you rather operate from? So even in your own language, subtle hints about, yeah, we could do that, maybe it's possible, or, we're doing this. Big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that she talked about in the book was about this. I think a student, and she said it was he was the most hardcore, turned off, low effort kid in the group. And after she had spoken about the growth mindset, he looked up with tears in his eyes and said, "You mean I don't have to be dumb?" And then from that day on, he worked. He started staying up late to do homework, which he never bothered to do at all. He started handing in assignments early so he'd get feedback and revise them. And now believe that working hard was not something that made you vulnerable, but something that made you smarter. You know what I mean? Like that's powerful. Like that to me, that's the stuff that moves me. Like Jesus, like how do we get people to shift like that?
Yeah, that's another trap in the book as well. It says if you're smart, then if you're having to work hard, it obviously advertises the fact that you're not smart. So there's like a trap there for the fixed mindset of people who think they're smart. Because you're smart, you shouldn't have to put effort in. And then there's also the opposite side of that as well.
Yeah, like even
The
the,
risk
the
of
the
too little effort.
yeah, and then you take the people that are some people are just naturally talented, right? And that we think anyway, right? Like it said something about Mozart. It says his ability or mindset. Was it Mozart's musical ability? Well, there's no doubt that this guy, he was had crazy skills, had perfect pitch, all these other things, right? Or it says or the fact that he worked until his hands were deformed. Was it Darwin's scientific ability, or the fact that he collected specimens nonstop from early childhood? like all the work. You know what I mean? It's like it says something simple like what was it about something about like the best pilots in the world are the ones that fly the most or something ridiculous, something simple like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you said about the Kenyan runners. They just run. And that's why they're good at it, because some of them just run.
Yeah. So I mean, we forget about that. We forget about that. Michael Jordan and Kobe, all those guys, but they were not only the most talented, they were the hardest working. Even when they were on top of their game, they just worked harder than everyone else. So how does
Yeah, and
how does,
there's another an informal logical fallacy that comes out of this. I think it's called the argument from incredulity. Because when we don't understand something, we say it can't be true. So when we don't understand what it takes in terms of 20 years of collecting specimens, or 20 years of running, or 15 years of non-stop basketball practice, it's almost beyond most people's comprehension. So because we don't stop to think about it, we just label it as I don't understand it, therefore magic.
well,
Therefore Magic
that's
Johnson.
the
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
it's raw talent, and because we ascribe it as raw talent, we dismiss the opportunities from ourselves, because we say, they must be talented, I'm not, therefore.
yeah, but that's how the brain chunks information too, right? It's like, is this new? Is this and that? And like think about like even me with the birthday paradox. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was just I wasn't thinking,
Yeah, that's
but
a
it's like
little
I was like,
teaser.
yeah, it didn't make sense to me. And then I had to look at it, and I was like, oh, okay. It's still a little because it's more the exponential thing, right? So it's like wow, but like everything in my core was telling me like how can two people, and I wasn't looking at it the right way. It's the same thing, right? So I give you an example. All my life through school, I thought I wasn't good at art, right? I could never really draw good. I had fun drawing, but I was never really good at it. And then after I graduated high school, one of my friends who was an artist, was in the Aspire art program. I mentioned to him one day that I'm not very good at drawing. He's like, that's ridiculous. He says everyone can be good at drawing. It's just so he grabs two notebooks and he says, draw a circle. I draw a circle. Draw a line like this, and he just draws like little sections. And I draw. I'm just doing what he's telling me to do. Right. The next thing you know, I drew like a Ren and Stimpy cartoon thing, and I mean his looked better than mine, but not that much better. Like it was crazy how good mine looked. And he said to me, "It's not that you don't know how to draw. You're just not looking at it the right way. You're not seeing it the right way. And I was like, oh my god, like holy shit, like my whole life I thought I was bad at drawing, and I just didn't know how to see the shapes or whatever to do one thing at a time to reconstruct it. It was mind blowing.
I had a similar experience. In fact, Dweck talks in the book about the course, drawing on the right side of the brain. I think I did that one, a few years ago. But I remember the first drawing I did in a primary school. So I was, 4 or 5 years old. And you know how many years it's been since? More than 30. So I still remember it. And we had to do a self-portrait. And now I got, typical stick figure. Got square trousers, square t-shirt, because that's, your level of sophistication when you're 4 or 5 years old. Round head. I looked at what everyone else was doing. Curly hair. Curly hair, curly hair, curly hair. Everyone's drawing curly hair. And I thought, well, no one in this class has curly hair. Why is everyone drawing it curly? And it seemed that they recognised that there was some depth to hair, but they just drew it as fuzz, like a curl. And I thought, well, I don't have curly hair. I have straight hair. And I had the typical bowl cut. So I knew the hair was straight, but in actual fact, it's curved, but it's curved around the scalp. But I didn't know how to draw the curved, but I knew it was straight. I knew it wasn't curly. So I picked up a pencil and drew straight hair. So and I knew the hair started at the scalp, so that was my start point. And I knew it was straight, but instead of going from the top of the head down to the eyes, I went from the top of the head up. And the only pencil that was left, because everyone else was using the brown and black pencils, because that's what colour hair everyone had, the only pencil that was left was an orange or a ginger one. I thought, well, form over substance. And I drew straight lines of orange hair up. Now, so I looked like a Mohican punk rocker. And I knew it wasn't
Yeah.
right, but that's the tools that I had that was left, and I knew my hair was straight, not curly. The ridicule I got from the teacher, and she was an art teacher as well, so I reckon she thought she knew something about art, and I didn't really understand the criticism because I knew my hair wasn't ginger, and I knew it didn't grow out of my head, so I was being told things I already knew rather than actually, how to do it, which was insightful at the time. It took
Yeah.
me
I don't know.
years to realise what was going on.
Yeah. I hate that shit, man. But it's true because like it's who cares? Like I don't give like you color the grass blue. You don't know anything about art. You can't color in the lines. You can't do this. It's so stupid. It's just like I wish we could like I hope the one thing I can pass on to my kid is to not care what people think like that. Like it's just like I draw how I want to draw. Like have that confidence that I don't care that you make your hair green, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I'm going to draw how I like to draw and have that expressive. It's about me getting stuff out of my head, not trying to fit into a mold that you think I should fit in. If I can get that and not let that shit get to him, then I think I did a pretty
Yeah,
good job.
yeah. It's interesting you talk about art as well. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups at the moment. One's Macabre Art. It's a bit depressing being in there, but I just wanted to go in there to experience something different. And came across, I don't know whether I came across it or whether it was in the group, but there's a documentary on YouTube by looking at the life of Francis Bacon. And the way he did his art, totally unconventional. You might look at it and go, what's the big deal about? But when you understand what was going on in his life and the context and how he learned to draw and what he was drawing and the subject matter, it is actually quite a profound tale. And after a little bit of education, you kind of, I get it. I get it, and I can appreciate this now, even though for some of his later stuff it was so intricate, but it was just like nothing you've ever seen before, and that's why it stands out, and that's why, I don't know, some of his paintings still go for millions and millions. Crazy stuff. But who's to judge?
Yeah, art's so subjective. It's yeah, I can tell you, like I got into music, and I'm a musician and everything, and I took music theory in high school, took 2 years of it, and learned all these rules about like counterpoint for like classical music, all these rules for 2 years, and then at the end of it all, the teacher just said, basically, write or play what you want, just be able to explain yourself. And I was like, why the fuck do I gotta explain myself? Like I just wasted all this time learning all these rules. And I guess it's good. I guess it makes sense now. But like at the time, I was so pissed. Where I guess you got to know the rules so you can break them. But like, why do I got to explain myself? I like the way this sounds. I don't give a crap what you think. You know what I mean? I think that sometimes dissonant sounds are the most beautiful. And nothing sounds more beautiful after a dissonant sound, and nothing sounds more dissonant after a beautiful sound. And I think it's the balance, the yin and yang, it's the push pull, it's the tension release that makes life exciting. You know?
Yeah, there was that documentary I sent over. I don't know if you watched it, about music, how they make music there, and they interviewed all these young creative musicians. And I was just startled by the kind of presence of the growth mindset, because they were talking about back in the synth days of the late 70s, early 80s, when all these synths started coming out. And they said, yeah, some of these very expensive, and we just wanted to get our hands on them just to see what they would do, how far we could push it, what we could connect it to, how else we could interact with it, and what it would do for us, and how many different ways we could use it. We wanted to explore the edge. We wanted to go beyond the edge. We wanted to push it. And it was always about not how can my music theory fit in with this. It was about how far can it go, and then go further. So it was always about an exploration. And they said to a certain extent, it wasn't even about making good music. It was just an exploration of how different can this be, or how many different ways, or what's new. And so it was always a consumption of following the path of what's new, and the music was just a byproduct of it.
Yeah, and it's perspective too, right? Because like I remember Jimi Hendrix on the Dick Cavett show or something, one of those shows, and there was like they were getting a lot of hate mail for the Star Spangled Banner, the way he played it, and Jimmy looked at him all confused and go, "Oh, I thought it was beautiful," and it's just doing things different sometimes can ruffle a lot of the feathers, and I thought it was beautiful too. So it's just kind of I don't know. It's such a personal thing. Like when someone says music is good, music's bad. I mean, I think in general, there's certain sounds that are more pleasing than others, and I've certainly heard some things I consider really bad music. But there's a fine line between art and I don't know, and science, I guess, whatever the
Yeah,
structure of music. But
there's a little channel I used to follow on YouTube, but he's kind of come off it for a while now because he's got pissed off with it. Because again, he only made videos whilst it was fun. I think it's Buckley. He does every year for the last 5 or 6 years. He's done worst music of the year. He's in or associated with the music business. So he does a series called Musical Autopsy. And about 2 days ago, he released worst songs of 2018, and it's pretty pitiful. It's just absolute trash, but it's sells a lot.
Well, it's so hard to say that, right? Because some of the worst songs, like some songs that are quoted to be like the worst songs, I like, and I'm a musician. I know a lot about music. There's some songs that I listen to and I'm like, that's a great song. The words are a little silly here and there, but like it's a well written song. And to say it's a bad song, you can't. It sticks in your head. They say it's a terrible song, but I'm like, it's a great song. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I don't care what music person says. Like some really cheesy songs I like, and I think they're really well written. Who's to say?
Yeah, it could be. Well, I mean, he's doing it a little bit tongue in cheek, but he does highlight that, when you've got a line in a song that ends in B-E, and then you've got another line in the song that rhymes with B-E, to actually use a word like me or actually repeat B, it's just really, really lazy songwriting.
Yeah, but how do you know that that's not what the song calls for, right? So it's if you're doing it like an educated, high fixed mindset type of thing, then yeah, maybe you're right. But like sometimes it's what the song calls for, and I think that's the challenge that I see a lot of musicians
Right.
is to write for the song, not to write for the ego.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, I mean, that's another thing. People's opinions, why do we value them? It's a simple question. And, I go back to people like Carl Sagan and Christopher Hitchens, who say, when extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So why is it that we value, typically when people express an opinion, we take it to heart and we accept it as fact? We've never actually asked them, well, okay, that's an interesting opinion. Do you have any facts, data, or evidence to support that opinion? And if not, then it's equally dismissed without any facts, evidence. But somehow when people express an opinion, we take it to heart and let it shape our decisions, when it's just somebody else's, often judgment from their belief or their context or their benchmarks, like judging that fish, its ability to climb trees. My opinion is you're a poor fish because you can't climb a tree. What the fuck?
Well, yeah, but there's also the framing of it too, right? Who's saying it? Whose frame is stronger? Who has more certainty? I mean, the basic sales 101. If a doctor who has a high status or whatever says something, then most people just automatically agree with it because he's a doctor. If someone has a lot of certainty about something, even if they don't know much about it, they just, oh, he must know what he's talking about because he's so confident and so much conviction. People don't question things. They just kind of maybe it's the cognitive load. They don't want to think for themselves, or what the fuck. Who knows what the fucking reasons are? But framing has a lot to do with it. Even me, like I told you about the doctor, like I knew that test was stupid and bullshit, and I'm fucking a pretty strong person. You know what I mean? And the next thing you know, I'm fucking doing the test just to, I'll just make sure and this and that. It's just stupid. Then you have to think about risk versus reward. Like if I save the $129 for the test, right? That's cool, right? But if God forbid something happened and I didn't, because I didn't spend $129, something stupid, like But I knew deep down inside, but there was still like one little part of me that wanted to please my wife and make sure that just to be safe. It was stupid though.
Yeah, well, in a way, I mean, I was just thinking there, when we get into all this judging about opinion and judgments, and it kind of again detracts from what's alive in people. And I remember from the audio last time the quote from Nonviolent Communication on how to give appreciation. Judgments and evaluation aside, what was the action that led to the needs that were met, that led to a feeling? So that's it. No opinion required, no judgment required. It's just what was done, did it meet the needs, and what was the feeling? And I think if you steer more towards that and less away from judgment, which implies fault, which implies fixed mindset, the other way is, what's alive in you, what's your big reasons, what's your big whys, what do you value in life, which comes back to, the actions that get the needs met and the feeling behind it.
I get it, but a lot of people we are emotional beings, right? We're not logical warriors, like that we just can use logic all the time. So sometimes emotions play a part, right? And what's an emotion? Well, we can get into all that, but
I think that's what I'm getting at, is that when we do judgments, diagnosis, and evaluations of people, like the fish we were talking about, that's all from logic and reason. But when we let that go and just say, the emotions, which are the feelings that you have when you get your needs met by an action of another, then that's all that matters, isn't it? Really, if you did something or I did something that met your needs or met my needs, and we had good feelings about that, we don't need to do any opinion, judgments, or evaluations. It's just, my need was met. Like, you say $129 for that test. Well, it satisfied a need. So in some respects, your wife wanted to, she had the need to make sure that you were going to be okay. And, perhaps there was a small little need at the back of your mind just to get that 1% of doubt out of there. Unfortunately, $129 is the price.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense, but there's other things too, like, other situations where that's what you're talking is, it makes complete sense. Obviously, it's very logical, but like when things happen out in the real world, we're not always in that logical space. We're caught up in things, and next thing you know, someone does something that we don't agree with, violates one of our something, and sometimes people just react. What's the difference from someone, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, it's hard coded. I mean, there you go. When someone does something that we don't like, well, that's an observation, and there's an internal feeling, and there's a need that's not being met. Your rights are being trampled on, or whatever it is. You feel that you're not free to do what it is that you wanted to do. I don't know. It's difficult, and because we're all this redemptive violence we see on TV, our immediate response is to mirror their actions or punish them or exact justice. And I think this is what Bolotto said in his book as well. The kind of mind, when you're in pain, it wants to leap to the first thing that gets you off pain, and normally that's retribution, or a bit of an indulgence in I'll punish them. I'll write that shitty email, or I'll dress them down in front of other people. Whereas Bolotto suggests taking a moment and searching your neural network for a better solution. And it occurred to me that this is what Marshall Rosenberg means in his MVC. It's don't look for the logical retribution. It's how can I make life better? What needs of theirs are not being met? What needs of mine are not being met? And then open a dialogue to find out and express, and then find out what needs we can get met and by what action. It is a bit lengthier process, but I think if we get to that book, it's a little bit like what you said last time. Go for the no. So. And I was, go to a car dealership, ask for a 60% discount. And I said, shit, what if he says yes? And then you said, well, ask for an 80% discount and keep going. And so that's it. You don't stop. You insist on keep going until you found the needs. So there's a certain level of commitment required. It's often easier just to say, him, blame, and walk off. That's the easy way out.
No, I know, but it's like I immediately go to the extreme. Someone's breaking into my house. Do I want to find out what his needs are not being met? Why he's breaking into my house? I'm going to just fucking shoot him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing that he does talk about. There are cases when force is obviously required to prevent immediate danger. We don't want to analyse a 3-year-old's need for putting metal objects in the wall socket. We probably don't want to have a calm discussion with somebody right now who's all fired up, got red mist, and got an automatic weapon in the hand. It's probably not a good time. But yeah, so there are, of course, limits. I mean, it'd be a good book to get into. Perhaps it's a couple of books away.
I was thinking. Oh, sorry, I had a question for you.
Go.
So there's a thing that she says in the book that's really cool. She said, what's so alarming is that we took ordinary children and made them into liars simply by telling them something.
Yeah. I got that in my notes right here as well. That's a great story. Yeah, go on.
Tell them that they were what?
Oh, well, that was where the testers told. They split the group into two, didn't they? And then they tested the different kind of rewards or feedback. So the first group had a reward or a feedback. You are highly talented. You've got great ability. And then the other half, they said, "Oh wow, you must have worked really hard to achieve that result."
Yeah, right, yeah. So basically, simply.
Go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to make a minor point in the second half when she says, we said, "Oh, you must have worked really hard." In my mind, that's actually another imposition because they might not have worked really hard. So my MVC hat would have said, let's ask them what they thought they did to get that achievement. Then it's self-actualized, because making a judgment again that they must have worked hard to get that result again is another judgment. They may not have, but they may have done something else. We should ask just to check. But that's just a small point. But yeah, the two groups.
No. Yeah, so simply by telling them they were smart, right? So telling children they're smart in the end made them feel dumber and act dumber, but claim they were smarter. I don't think this is what we're aiming for when we put positive labels, gifted, talented, brilliant, on people. We don't mean to rob them of their zest for challenge and their recipes for success, but that's the danger. And then it talked about, like, one of the things about the Polgar family, the women chess players, and she said something like, my father believes that innate talent is nothing, that success is 99% hard work. I agree with him. The youngest daughter, Judith, is now considered the best woman chess player of all time. She was not the one with the most talent, Susan reports. Judith was a slow start, but very hardworking, right? And then the same thing, like, Michael Jordan wasn't a natural either. He was the hardest working athlete, perhaps in the history of the sport, which no one talks about, like we said earlier.
Yeah, I heard that from Dorian Yates, who won the Mr. Olympia, I think 6 or 7 times. And in one interview, he said, everything he ate logged, every workout logged, everything he did written down. He said, I won Mr. Olympia because it would have been impossible for anyone else to have worked any harder or been more dedicated or been more precise in what they ate when they worked out, how much sleep they got. He said, I monitored the lot for 10 years. It's impossible for anyone else to have done any more. That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, that's, how can you deny that, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I have a good friend, my friend Matt, who amazing guitar player, and he has probably played, and I'm not using that as an excuse to say that that's why he's better than me or nothing, but he has played probably more than 99% of other guitar players, and he works hard, and he always strives to be better. It's no coincidence, you know what I mean? It's like, that's why they say, if you try to do too many things, the jack of all trades, master of none sometimes. But then you look at someone like Da Vinci or Tesla and all these other people who have constantly prove that wrong. So, but I get it. If you only have 100% attention, if you put it all into one thing, you're probably going to get, in general, better results than if you split it up around 5 things and only give 20% of your time.
Yeah, it makes sense. Focus again. And there was a missing piece, I think, in the story of the school kids, because when that experiment was over, they invited the class to write to another school, didn't they? Because she said, we're going to run this experiment in another school, and the kids in that school might like to know how you did in regard to these tests. So they invite the children to write a little bit about their experience of receiving the feedback and what score they got. And it was only the ones who were rewarded with, wow, you're so talented, that actually fudged their own score result. That they all, I think the majority of them uplifted their own score, knowing that it wasn't true. Whereas the growth mindset kids just expressed it as it was. Because the highest score is then pegged to their ability. And if they have a higher ability, then obviously they must have got a better score than they did. So that's how it made the liars out of them. By pitting their identity to being brilliant, and of course brilliant people get high scores. So how can you write to somebody else saying, I am brilliant but only got 5% on my score sheet? It's just totally incongruent. So what are you going to say? That I'm actually, the evidence says that I'm actually not brilliant but shit, but my teacher told me I'm brilliant, therefore the denial comes in, the massage of reality. I must have got a better score than really happened. And so that's how they make lies out of people. Not that's how you do it, but that's a consequence of adopting that labeling and putting identities onto people, because then they try and live up to the identity despite the reality. And this is the other thing about beliefs, isn't it? A lot of these arguments with young earth creationists and flat earth people, the identity and the belief system trumps any kind of evidence, and then they have to distort evidence or distort reality to be able to maintain their belief systems.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I've been exploring another thing too the last couple days, maybe 3-4 days, about like the opposite, right? I think I mentioned to this, but like, if I hate running, right, then I probably should take up running. If I hate, if I'm opposed to certain things, then maybe I should to do it, right? If I am an extrovert, want to be around people, I need to spend more time self-reflecting, stuff like that. So it's just interesting, like, thinking the opposite way, and to really get out of your comfort zone, and to really shape who we are as people and character. Like, that a lot of people say you should only do what you're great at, and then everything else you shouldn't do. Spend your focus in your wheelhouse. I think that's all well and good, but I think it's powerful being able to face the things that we don't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's the danger of stereotyping. I don't fit in here, therefore I shouldn't do it. It's straight out of the book again. So exactly, break that stereotype. Go and do that thing you've been told that you can't do or shouldn't do, or be, even if it's the thing that you tell yourself that you don't like or can't do. Go and do it anyway. It's that impossible thing. Great, go and do it anyway.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. There's a part of me that really digs that type of stuff. That just embrace that. You know what I mean? Where it's not like, like you said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first. Just to break those patterns of these limiting beliefs. Do you know what I mean? I'm not good at this. Well, now I gotta do that now. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
I don't
Did
know.
you ever see Moneyball? Brad Pitt,
Um, I don't know if I've seen it. I think I read the book.
Hoffman, Philip Seymour Hoffman. He was in it as well. It was a good
I don't.
film.
I read the book, but I hadn't watched it. I haven't watched the film.
Uh,
That's about the baseball
right.
baseball team,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
on base percentage and stuff like that, or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember watching it a few years ago before I realised about these mindsets. The opening scene is where I think they've lost their star player, and the team's in the shitter, and the funding's drying up. So they've got all the coaches and recruiters all around the board table, and they're all saying stupid shit like, oh, I like this guy. When he hits the ball, you can really hear it pop. Or, I like this guy. He's really got character. He really draws the crowd in. He's got a big smile. Oh, I like this guy because you can just tell because of the way he walks. Yeah, it's all judgment, evaluation, diagnosis, anecdotes, and no real data. And then Billy Bean is listening to it all, and then he just looks up and says, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Even if these guys are really good, even if when he hits the ball it pops, really, even if this other guy has got a great smile, can we afford them anyway? No. So what the fuck are we talking about?
That's funny. Well, didn't they have like they ended up winning all the games with like the second lowest budget or something ridiculous?
Yeah, so what they did is they got the maths people in and started analysing the cost per run effectively. That there was the pitcher who had a really weird pitch. He'd almost pitch underarm, but when he looked at his stats, he got more outs per throw than anyone else, and he was cheap. So they bought him, and then they started buying players that were weird, but they outperformed their effective run or out per dollar of even the best players. And then they put them together, kind of got a bit of a team gelled around it. They had a few come in, a few go out, but eventually they assembled a high performing team on paper with very little money, and then with a little bit of training, I think, from a few old hands, seasoned players, they got a team that gelled, and yeah, that the rest is history.
Yeah, that's cool. I actually should watch that movie. I read the book a long time ago, and it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, the opening scene, it was just an eye opener when I watched it. It's like, oh yeah, of course this is it. It's all supposition, what if, could be, maybe. And then it's just like, even if we haven't got the fucking money, so what the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah, that's powerful. That's so simple, but it's like there's good and bad to that, right? Like, I guess it's like it makes sense if you have a fixed thing for the business, you don't have the money to put in, then you can only do what you can do. So what the fuck are we even looking at this for? But then there's also a part of me that's like the dreamer. You know what I mean? That's inside of me that sees all possibilities. And this is my downfall. It's my strength and my downfall. Whereas, like, it doesn't matter if we can make it happen. How can we make this work, kind of thing. Where I could go down a rabbit hole trying to get this player, where I should cut it off and just kind of go the other route. So that's kind of like the double edged sword of it.
Yeah, it's like the naturals, they seldom learn how to work hard because they kind of had it easy, for whatever. They've had a competitive edge when they're younger, but when it gets tough and when it starts to exceed what they've naturally been good at, they don't actually have a model for learning. Yeah, and they crumble and they seize up, and then they say, wow, shit, because I'm starting to fail, my identity's locked to this brilliant genius, but I'm starting to get low scores now. Shit, I better stop doing the tests so that I don't get any more low scores. And then they don't know what to do.
Such a silly way.
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's funny how you read these things and then you start seeing it everywhere. Everywhere I see, every time I hear
Yeah.
some limiting belief, it's the fixed mindset speaking. it makes me think of my mom, and she used to do something that used to bother me, and I called her out on it once, and I was like, because she'd say, anything that good happened to her, you'll love this, but she'll say it was because of God, and she thanked God, and then anything bad that happened to her, she would blame herself. So I said, Mom, I said, listen, if you're going to give God credit for everything that good happens to you, then you need to blame him for everything that bad happens. Or if you're going to blame yourself for everything that bad happens, then you got to give yourself credit for everything that good happens. It doesn't go that way. You can't just select and choose. Unfortunately, it's very disempowering where everything that bad happens to you, you're a piece of shit. Everything that good happens to you is because some outside source. It's just not a good model.
Yeah, I see that a lot in what's happening in Hollywood at the moment. Like when a really good film comes out, it's all praise for the director. When a bad film comes out, it's studio interference.
That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, locus of control. Yeah, I made some notes on that as well. Might have to go through that next time because I think we're about up to chapter 4 maybe now, a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've been on about an hour and 10 now. So
I'm starting to tap out. I only have so much bandwidth for this stuff, and then I gotta regroup.
yeah, well let's knock it on the head and regroup.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
brother.
brilliant, excellent. I'll catch you soon.
Have a good one.